Perpendicular lines are lines that are at right angles to each other or 90 degrees to each other. For example, let's take this line here and let's take another line here. Both lines are at 90 degrees. They're a right angle. They're said to be perpendicular. Notice that the gradient of the green line is positive and the gradient of the red line is negative. Now let's put another pair of perpendicular lines on the axis. Supposing we have this green line here, and supposing the gradient of the green line equals 2. In other words, for every 2 units up and down, we move 1 unit to the right. Now let's add another line that's perpendicular to the green line. Something like that. Now, if I'd had accurate axes, I'd notice that the opposite is happening. Let's just draw a little triangle. And I'd notice that every 2 units across on the x-axis, I'd go 1 unit up and down on the y-axis. Notice also that the gradient of the red line is negative. So in this example, the gradient equals minus 1 over 2, minus a half. That's a shallow slope. Now notice if I multiply together the gradients of these 2 lines, so I multiply 2 and minus a half, I get minus 1. And that's the general rule for perpendicular lines. The gradients or the products of the gradients of perpendicular lines is minus 1. So the general rule is this: if I have 2 lines with gradients m1 and m2, these are just numbers, I'm just labelling them m, but they're the gradients of 2 separate lines. They're perpendicular if m1 times m2 equals minus 1. They're parallel, in fact the 2 lines are parallel if the gradients are equal. And that's a useful rule to remember. So we have perpendicular lines for the first rule, and we will have parallel lines for the second rule.